truly unusual breaking news. You know the breaking news animation. You know sometimes the news is big, significant, serious. This one is unusual. A major escalation in what is increasingly a kind of political, quiet, peaceful civil war, but a civil war of political proportions for MAGA over these Epstein files. And it's roiling the Trump administration at quite literally the highest levels. Sources detailing the ongoing clash over a fight that could cost someone their job. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi clashing with the FBI number 2 official Dan Bongino. As everybody who follows these kind of stories knows, technically the AG oversees the FBI, but if you remember Comey or other strong-willed FBI officials, when you're at that number 1, number 2 level, they sometimes fight with the DOJ. Sources say Bongino is so upset about all this, he's saying maybe he'll just leave, which would be a very quick tenure, by the way, and he would be leaving in a sort of protest or criticism of Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Other outside agitators, including Tucker Carlson, saying she's lost confidence, maybe she has to go. He was not at work today, reportedly. Sources also say Bondi and Bongino got into a heated clash Wednesday in a high-level meeting with him, her, FBI Director Patel, and Donald Trump's number 1 person who tracks all this stuff and makes the big staffing decisions, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, who, of course, also ran the Victoria's campaign. Axios has a report on this where Pam says her piece, Dan says his piece, didn't end on friendly terms. Bongino left angry. And you don't need to be a scholar of reporting or Watergate level intrigue to know somebody in this small meeting is leaking this stuff to Axios if it's true. A source close to Bongino saying he ain't coming back. Out of control furious is the other quote. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired.
MAGA is a cult. Donald Trump's followers have had their brains rotted so much over the past decade that no matter what he says, does, or believes, they will always fall in line. That bond is unshakable until this week. Because the Jeffrey Epstein scandal rocking Donald Trump's White House to its core is a breaking point we never saw coming through insurrection, through promises made, promises broken, MAGA always stuck by their guy until this week. And it is blowing up in Trump's face like we have never seen before. Because after he exploited a conspiracy theory for political support, telling lie after lie about his relationship with Epstein, it has all come back to bite him now in the most public way possible. Because at Turning Point USA, an event Donald Trump attends, boos rain down on him in the most delicious way that we're going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way in supporting the work that we're doing on this show. Now, before we can see Trump get booed by a crowd full of MAGA supporters, I want to start with a clip that really shows how upset his base is.
Right there, if you were in the Oval this morning with the president before he left for Kerrville, Texas, give me your top 3 things that you would tell the president of the United States that coming from a young person in the base and a dedicated worker and follower of his that you feel he needs to do right now.
We need to enforce the laws of this country, and like you said, Steve, there's no better question than who rules America. It's not the people. So we need to obviously have the declassification of the Epstein files. You don't think Donald Trump as president, you would tell Donald Trump in the Oval Office that you think there's an open question with him as commander-in-chief and doing all he's doing, you would actually tell Trump you don't know, you question who rules this country? I definitely would, because it's a blackmail ring, and anybody who wouldn't is not paying attention. Simply put, Epstein himself said that he was best friends on the stand with Donald Trump. So anybody who thought that these files were going to get just declassified because we pressured him enough or you voted harder enough is just lying to yourself, frankly.
Do you agree with a special prosecutor has to be an independent special prosecutor has to take over? Do you believe that DOJ and FBI right now, with the guys who are all close to, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, do you think they have any credibility left to pursue this?
No, and I'll tell you exactly why, Steve, because in 2016, we trusted the plan with Trump, but now Trump has become the deep state. The exact thing we voted him in.
Why do you say he's become the deep state?
What is more deep state than covering up for pedophiles? Why would you go to that island? Why? Tell me, why would you go to that island? Why would you go on the plane? Why his top donors, sorry.
Yep.
Why
Okay.
are his top donors neighbors?
Anybody agree with that? Are we going to lose? Are we going to?
Saying that Donald Trump has become the deep state is the first time I've ever agreed with a MAGA supporter, because it's true. Trump has always been part of the elite, even though he pretended to be an outsider. The billionaire who was already president was never truly an outsider. MAGA followers have ignored this truth for years because of their cult-like mindset. Now, some are finally starting to see it, but not everyone. Megyn Kelly even tried to win the crowd back for Trump just before things got worse with another Fox host. This clip is right here.
Busy lives, and President Trump has a busy life, and I don't think he realizes how much she's humiliated the administration. This is a self-inflicted wound. She caused it. Again, I have nothing against Pam Bondi, but if you want to look for the villain in this story, we have found her. She is the person who's she's either lying now or she was lying then. There's no two ways about it. And if you accept...
Brian Tyler Cohen explained it perfectly when he said Pam Bondi is not a believable scapegoat because she is just an extension of Donald Trump. She does whatever he wants. So if you're mad at her for the Epstein cover-up, you're really mad at Trump. MAGA supporters don't want to accept this truth. At Turning Point USA, when Laura Ingraham asked the crowd about Trump's handling of Epstein, the boos filled the room. This clip is right here.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap. Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve. So I was going to get to that. How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
I could watch that clip all day. They are furious. And they should be. But they should have been just as mad when Trump tried to overturn the election and sent a violent mob to the Capitol. Maybe that should have been the breaking point. But now at least, they are finally realizing something. Trump isn't just repeating a conspiracy theory. He is directly exploiting it and the victims involved. He turns real pain and tragedy into a game for power and attention. MAGA is starting to see that. And so are people inside Trump's White House. Whether they truly want the truth or just want to keep making money, these fights are breaking out. Ari Melber broke that down right here.
Said someone who, again, according to that reporting, spoke with Bongino. By the way, hire podcasters and right-wing media figures to run major parts of the government, and you may find major parts of the government are being leaked on and run like another piece of podcast content. I'll come back to how some of this does swirl around MAGA content. Other parts of it, of course, are serious when you think about the victims in the original Epstein case. All of this, though, occurred because the DOJ has fallen short of the pledges that people around Trump, including Bondi, made. There were many questions about the Epstein case. From the moment of his in-custody death, this news program, for example, has reported on those questions. There are some suspicious details. This news program has not done what a lot of the internet and MAGA right-wing sort of circles have done, which is assert without evidence what maybe happened and then wait for the government to confirm it. Now we're seeing significant backlash from MAGA, probably some of the loudest against Trump since he took office. Journalists, other people following Doge and Musk may be reporting one set of problems to the administration, but on the right, this is the big problem. All of this is because it was partly stoked by the very people who now say nothing to see here. They stoked this conspiracy which imploded on them.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
In Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
What names are in there, man? You understand how many powerful people probably want this thing to desperately go away?
The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because they this is another government gangster operation.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Release the list. That's the now vice president. The list's on my desk, the attorney general. The government gangsters, quote unquote, are in charge of all this stuff. The problem is they caught the car. All those people talking up that way now have the goods. They're in the government. They used to be pointing their finger. They found it pointing at themselves, like many an old internet meme, and it's blown up on them. So this matters politically because one or more people may be out of a job. It matters in a deeper sense because we're seeing the limits of governing by clickbait or political conspiracy theory. It also could matter if any of it got back to the real questions about the Epstein case, not whether Pam Bondi was lying when she said she had an Epstein list or is lying now when the memo says it doesn't exist, but can't be both. Now, in the FBI, there's a wider dysfunction involving some of these same people who we know from what they're saying have been spending many, many days, a lot of their energy on a client list they now say doesn't exist. But the Times is reporting that the FBI is taking the unusual step of using lie detectors for loyalty tests, subjecting personnel to questions as specific as to whether they've criticized or, quote, cast aspersions on Patel, who you just saw in that other clip talking about gangsters. This looks like something from a movie or another era, but according to the Times, it's happening. And in Trump's DOJ under Bondi, there's also a purge because there are officials who say they might be targeted not for how they're doing their job, but whether they're insufficiently, quote, politically loyal to Bondi and Trump. Fired without explanation, a culture of fear is how the Post describes it. And so one more point on all this tonight. What started as a very real question about a suspicious in-custody death, any journalist or lawyer could tell you the government's holding a high-profile detainee and they die under suspicious circumstances, you want to investigate that. What started with something real morphed into a MAGA conspiracy theory that was sold so hard by these leaders that it's blown up in their face. And more than almost anything Trump has done thus far in the second term, and you follow the news, you're familiar with it, this is the thing saddling Trump. This is the thing that has them leaking on each other, fighting with each other, talking about not coming back to work, all because the story they sold themselves blew up on themselves. I want to bring in our experts, Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times and MSNBC analyst, and Alencia Johnson, who worked on the Harris 24 campaign and wrote Flip the Tables, Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. Plenty in there for the times we're in now. Welcome to both of you. Michelle, multiple things can be true. We're all for investigating and holding the government accountable. If there were problems in the original handling of Epstein, it stretches from the Trump folks who were in charge of the Bureau of Prisons at the time. If there was further cover-up or lack of transparency, that would include, of course, the ensuing Democratic administration, and now back to the Trump folks again. So there may be good questions to ask, and yet so many of the questions that have blown up in their face seem to be of their own making. In Bondi's case, saying things that she would know to be untrue.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I should say I don't really have very many priors about this. I'm inclined to believe that if there was evidence that Epstein was murdered, or if there was evidence of a so-called client list, given that we've had first Trump in charge, then Biden, now Trump again, there would be somebody who had the incentive to leak it or to put that out there. You know, that said, there are, as you said earlier, there are a lot of weird things about this case, including now the changed metadata on the tape that they put out. But I think the key is two things. One, that Pam Bondi has made these statements that can't be reconciled. Either she was lying outright and kind of getting the MAGA people's hopes up when she said, I have this list on my desk, you know, or she's lying now when she says no such lists exist and there's nothing there. And I think that part of it is that there's a difference between someone like Pam Bondi, who could have been a Republican official in a lot of different administrations, and someone like Dan Bongino, who is purely a creature of the MAGA world, would never be in the FBI under any other president, and then sort of has no political or entertainment future if he is seen by the MAGA base as a traitor. You know, Pam Bondi is more of a sort of Bill Barr figure, and so they might all despise her. But if they feel really betrayed by Dan Bongino, who I think probably was a true believer that he was going to come in there and they were going to have this cathartic exposure of all their enemies, if he's now seen as being part of a cover-up, I think that's much more of a threat to him personally.
Yeah, I appreciate that breakdown. That makes a lot of sense. Alencia, I want to play the MAGA meltdown over this. For folks who aren't constantly watching The War Room or Tucker, you maybe only have heard some of it. But again, I don't think it's an overstatement that they're more upset about this than most anything that's happened in these first 170 days. Take a look.
Don't tell us all this stuff's coming out and the investigation's massive and that Trump wants it released and then say, oh, there's nothing there.
This stinks. This just reeks.
Pam Bondi needs to be fired. Who is rolling this out? The little rascals?
So I'm going to go throw up, actually.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
This seems like unforgivable behavior.
For them to do something like this tears my guts out.
Now is a time like we have really never had before to message against this administration. The tent is widening every single day. It's getting bigger. More people are disaffected by Donald Trump, and it is our responsibility to communicate his failure and make sure we bring them into this opposition. We are certainly going to be so on this show. Thanks for watching this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop the blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.